Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that we're looking into today is the unsolved disappearance of Lars Mittank. This was once more a suggested case, so thank you for that. I appreciate any suggestions that you guys have. Now, Lars was just 28 years old when he went missing from Varna Airport in Varna, Bulgaria on the 8th of July in 2014. This case was much like the Elisa Lam case in the sense that there was footage of Lars around the airport and it kind of took the internet by storm. So many people have watched his last moments on CCTV, his last known moments, of him literally full belt sprinting away from the airport and over a fence and into a forest. People have watched it over and over again. They've analysed it so much, and it was so much so that this case was actually dubbed the most famous missing case on YouTube, and for good reason. This case is just so bizarre. To this day, no one knows what happened to Lars after he disappeared off the face of the earth from a busy airport. I'd just like to let you know, no disrespect to anyone I talk about today, I've just gathered the information from the internet and compiled it into a video for educational purposes. Lars Mittank. I apologise if I said that wrong. I probably have. It doesn't sound right to me, but I don't know how to pronounce it, so I'm sorry about that. But he was born on the 9th of February in 1986 in Germany. He lived in the northwest and he worked in a power plant. He was described as this genuinely nice guy. He had lots of friends. He had really good relationships with the people around him. He got on really well with his family. He adored them. He also had a girlfriend, and he was really close to everyone, including his family. He was also described as being really outdoorsy. He loved to fish and camp and be outside and enjoy sort of anything outdoor activity wise. He loved it all. It was in June of 2014 that Lars and a bunch of his former high school friends, 5 of them, all decided that they were gonna go on holiday as like sort of a boys' holiday. They were all in the late 20s and they wanted to enjoy a lad's holiday like many people do. They were looking into destinations as to where they could go before they finally decided that they were going to go to Bulgaria. They eventually chose the Golden Sands Resort, which is a well-known tourist spot. It's a major seaside resort on the northern Bulgarian Black Sea coast. The resort is surrounded by like woodlands and it's just such a really nice place to go. It's a very, very popular tourist destination. And it's actually located in the 3rd largest city in Bulgaria. On the 30th of June of 2014, Lars set off with his friends. They were actually supposed to go home on the 7th of July, so they were just spending the week there, having fun, partying, drinking, enjoying themselves, and then they were going to go back to Germany. They had planned to stay in this beautiful fancy hotel called HVD Viva Hotel. The holiday was brilliant initially. The weather was beautiful. They would go out drinking, they would go out on the beach and just soak in the rays. Anything that a normal lad's holiday they would do, they just did it, and it was fantastic. They never really anticipated that by the end of this holiday they would actually be a friend down. As I said, everything was fine initially, but after a while his friends did think something was up with Lars. He began acting a little bit odd. So this hotel was all inclusive. They booked it all inclusive. It included the meals, the drinks, everything. So yeah, I've done it myself where sometimes you want to go out and have something that isn't their food, but you still eat. Lars didn't eat anything, pretty much. He just said he wasn't hungry all the time, never really ate anything, and people thought it was strange. His friends thought that was odd for him. But again, they didn't really think that it was a huge deal because people go through phases like that. People go through phases of not wanting to eat. And I guess that's just what they thought it was. Even though they thought it was odd, they just sort of brushed it off and didn't think too much of it after that. The holiday went smoothly, as I said. That was until the last few days of the trip. So the lads had this typical night partying, enjoying themselves, and then they decided that they were going to go and watch the football in a local bar, which was called the Rock Bar. They were going to watch this football game between Costa Rica and the Netherlands. I believe it was the World Cup, and that was on the 6th of July 2014. Let me just say here, there's a lot of contradicting information on this case. There's a lot of one source says something and another source says something different, and it's just hard to know which one is the truth and which one to go with. But I've just gone with like the most prominent, so if you found any more information that's obviously contradictory, then that's probably why, because I don't know, there's just a lot of contradictory information out there. Anyway, it would seem that there was a bit of fooling around on Lars's part. He was this guy who always loved to mess around, but he was nice. He didn't ever mean anything by it. He just liked to sort of play around and have a bit of fun with people. And so the bar had these mini flags on each table. Apparently Lars was going around and he was switching them around. Now, a group of Bayern Munich fans didn't really take it as a joke, and they told him to stop, and things really got a bit tense. Lars did try and calm everything down because he was just messing around. He didn't mean anything by it. He probably just thought that they would take it as a joke, but they didn't, and so he tried to sort of diffuse the situation. And then the night continued. The group decided that they were hungry, so they went out to a McDonald's. Now, once more, Lars didn't want anything, so they went inside. He told them that he would wait outside because he didn't want any food, so they went inside to order. When they came out, Lars was gone. Now, they didn't have a clue where he'd gone, but they probably just thought sometimes orders can take a while, especially if there's a few of you to sort of get. Maybe he got bored, maybe he didn't want to wait outside anymore, maybe he went back to the hotel. So, not really thinking much of it, they did the same. They went back to the hotel and obviously went to sleep, didn't really think too much of it. The following day, Lars met with his friends again and he had a story to tell. He said that the guys at the bar that he had argued with had found him later on and beat him up. Or that they got somebody else to find him and beat him up. But basically that they were the instigators of it. Whichever it was, he was alone at the time and they beat the crap out of him. He was hit so hard in the head that his eardrum ruptured, which was confirmed by a local doctor. Now, at this section in the case, I read some information that his friends didn't really believe that story. They felt like it was really far-fetched. Now, obviously we don't know whether that was the truth or not. We don't know whether he got in a fight. We don't know whether it was those guys. All we do know is that he was injured from something or other. We just don't know what. Whether he was telling the truth or not, I just don't know. Either way, the holiday was due to end soon. They were supposed to be going home pretty soon, and he was in a lot of pain with his ear, so his friends advised him to go to the doctor, which, as I said, he went. They diagnosed him with a ruptured eardrum, but they said that he couldn't fly. Now, again, this is where it gets contradicting information, because I've seen that the doctor said he couldn't fly in some articles, and other articles, they have said that he could, but that Lars didn't want to, because obviously it would be painful. Now, I don't really know much about ruptured eardrums and things, but it's something to do with the pressure in the cabin that I don't think it's dangerous, I'm not sure on that, but it's going to be very painful. So to spare himself that, or the doctor to spare him that, they decided that he wasn't going to fly. The doctors then prescribed him cefuroxime 500, which is an antibiotic, and referred him to hospital. Obviously, they do advise you not to drink or take anything with certain antibiotics, pretty much all of them, I think, because they can have side effects. It can affect the drug adversely, affecting you adversely. And a lot of people do believe that the following erratic behaviour that he showed could have been because of that. The problem with all this was that they'd come to an end of the trip. They were supposed to fly home on the 7th of July, and he now apparently couldn't fly. His friends didn't really want to leave him alone, which you wouldn't, and they offered to stay with him, to stay behind all of them so that obviously he wouldn't be alone. But he refused. They felt really bad about it. They kind of really tried to stay behind, but he insisted that he would be okay alone and that they should go. And so they did. There was another problem. He'd booked, obviously, his hotel for a week. He was staying there for a week. The week was up, and so the hotel was gone. It was peak season, so he was going to really struggle to find another place to stay. But eventually he did. He apparently found a room vacancy in the Colour Hotel, which was apparently on sort of a bad side of town. But it was a cheap hotel and it was very close to the airport. Obviously, at this point, he probably just wanted to go home. So it was his best option, and that's where he decided to stay. Everything seemed to be okay for a few hours. He checked into the hotel really late, and then his mother, Sandra Mittank, would receive a strange phone call from her son, who had already begun behaving strangely. At around 11:50 p.m, Lars called his mother. He said that the hotel was strange, that he was scared and frightened, and that she should put a block on his credit cards. He also said that something was wrong with the place and that he had to leave. She said he sounded completely panicked. Before she could ask him what was up, he hung up on her. The CCTV footage from the hotel catches him in the foyer. He's pacing around it and looking very distressed. He was also caught looking out of windows and ducking into elevators, as if he was trying to hide from someone. He was absolutely petrified of something, and he wanted to go home. He actually ran out of the hotel at around 1 a.m, and no one knows where he went, nobody knows what he did. An hour later, at 2 a.m, he comes back. He goes back into his room and he calls his mother again. This time, he's whispering to her frantically. He says, "I'm hiding right now. I have to whisper or they'll find me. 4 are after me and I'm hiding." And then he put the phone down again. Sandra must have been so scared and petrified, literally receiving this call from your son who was in a different country. Oh my God, it must have been so frightening. But at the same time, she stated that she didn't want to ring him back because obviously she wanted to ring him back. But if he is literally hiding from someone and his phone's on loud, she didn't want to give away his position, and so she held off. She didn't ring him back. Later on, she then got a text message off Lars which said, "What is CFC 500?" which it's presumed that he was referring to his antibiotics, cefuroxime 500. Then all went silent and his mother was left there wondering what on earth was going on, if her son was okay, and just terrified of the whole situation. The next morning, he called his mum again and he said that the people that were chasing him were getting close. On the 8th of July in 2014, Lars was scheduled to go home on a flight that his mother had booked him. He apparently got a lift in a taxi with a woman that he'd met earlier on. They were both heading in the same direction and so they shared the taxi cab. He was going to the airport. I don't know whether she was going there or whether where she was going would pass the airport, but they apparently rode together. This woman took a note of his eyes being extremely dilated during the cab ride, which can sometimes be sort of an indication of someone being drunk or on drugs. Lars then texts his mother to say that he'd got there safely, and as he walks into the airport, which is caught on footage, he wants to seek out a doctor to make sure that he's okay to fly. Before he goes in there, he asks his mother to send him €500, and she did. She then tried to call him multiple times after this, to which he never answered. So in this infamous footage, you can see Lars arriving at the airport at 9:30 a.m. and he looks pretty normal. He doesn't look distressed. It shows him speaking to a woman, which has been sort of pretty much deduced that he was asking her for directions to the doctor's office. She gives him directions to the medical centre during their brief conversation, and then he walks towards it. As I said, it's believed that he was going there to get his ear checked one final time, just to make sure that before he got on the flight, everything was okay and that he could fly. So he goes in Dr. Kostov's office. He drops his bags on the floor and he sits down on the chair. The doctor said that he was acting very strange. It was a standard checkup and he was acting very nervous and erratic. He looked in his ear and he confirmed that he was okay to get on the plane. It was said that he didn't trust the medication that he was given for his ear pain, and the doctor described it as being strange when he looked back on it. Then a man wearing construction worker outfit walks into the doctor's office, and as soon as Lars sees this man, he begins to tremble, he begins to stutter. He is suddenly visibly petrified. He apparently muttered something under his breath, then said, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." He was in the doctor's office for less than an hour, and the CCTV literally picks him up again as he is sprinting full blast out of that doctor's office, out of the airport. He didn't take any of his things, he left his luggage. He literally didn't take anything with him. He just shot out there like a bullet. He jogs. He sprints out of the airport initially, but then slows his sprint to a jog. He jogs across the parking lot. Climbs over an 8-foot barbed wire fence surrounding the perimeter. And then he just runs off into the woods. And that is the last time he was ever seen alive again. His wallet, his passport, his mobile phone, they were all still in his luggage. So he literally ran straight out of there without nothing, just the clothes on his back. The search for Lars began and the police searched the entire area. They literally had drones out, they had men on the ground, they had cadaver dogs, but they just found nothing. Sharon went on to hire a private detective, Andreas Gutig. He watched the footage over and over again. He contacted hospitals, he contacted homeless shelters. He literally went out to Varna himself and handed out missing persons posters of Lars. Of course, there were sightings being called in of Lars, but the police couldn't confirm for certain that it was him. In 2015, a truck driver said that he saw Lars in a tip, but nothing ever really came of that. There have also been photos of other homeless men that people thought could have been him. Once more, nothing ever came of those either. Some 5 years later, in 2019, a truck driver picked up an unknown hitchhiker in Dresden and took him to the north of Berlin. The trucker later became aware of the missing guy, Lars Mittank, and said that this man looked like an older version of the person in the photo of Lars. Once more, don't know what came of that, haven't heard anything since. Sandra just really wants her son back. She's doing everything she can and everything she could at the time. She was on German TV, she was on Bulgarian TV multiple times, and she keeps on spreading the word of Lars over Facebook and social media and things like that. Over the years, Sandra has received messages and photos from really all over the world, including one of a man that resembled Lars in South America. This man was found walking down a highway with no shoes on, sort of crumpled up clothes, and he didn't have a clue who he was or what he was doing there. And as you can see from this photo, it kind of does look like Lars. People really did think it might have been him. However, it turned out that this man's name was Anton, and he himself had actually been missing for 5 years. Now, that was great news that he was eventually found, reunited with his family, but obviously Lars was still missing. On Sunday, the 19th of July in 2020, Sandra Mittank once more received a photo of a young guy, a homeless man who was sighted taking a bath in the River Rhine in Dusseldorf. She asked the residents there to send more pictures of him and to call the police when they saw him. 2 hours later, the bad news came in. It was unfortunately not her son. So there's a lot of theories on what happened to Lars, of course. Some say that he might have run away and gotten lost in the woods and possibly lost his life, but locals stated that the airport is surrounded by life in some form or another. The woods that people refer to is actually quite a small area of trees that was thoroughly searched at the time. Some believe that maybe he orchestrated it himself. Maybe he pretended that all of these things had happened, put on that he was acting so strangely, so that he could start a new life somewhere and just start again. Some believe that he was forced to become a drug mule, which isn't unheard of for tourists. And that could have been the reason why he ended up with the birthday drum in the first place. They beat him, maybe forced him to have these drugs and to take it to the airport. Now, the thing with drugs is that a lot of people hide them in the body, so they'll put them in bags and they will swallow them. Sometimes, a lot of the time, these bags can leaking out toxic drugs into your system, and it can be very dangerous. Maybe that's why Lars's eyes were so dilated and he was acting so strangely. Maybe he was a drug carrier, maybe not by choice, and they were leaking, and that was what made him act so strangely. If that was the case and he didn't seek any medical attention, he wouldn't have survived, I don't believe. It's also worth noting that Bulgaria has the highest rates of human trafficking in the European Union. It's not really a highly believed theory, but again, it's a possibility. Some people believe that it was a psychotic break, that he had a traumatic brain injury from being beaten up. And that can often take some time to manifest, so it can take days, weeks, months even. Others believe that it was a medication he was on, that the same night that he was actually prescribed these antibiotics, he was out drinking, and you're not supposed to mix them. So maybe mixing them caused the drugs to react violently to his body, and that maybe he was experiencing effects from that. Normally, the side effects of this drug are like cold-like symptoms, so it's not usually, hallucinations or anything like that, but you just never know how mixing alcohol with the drug can affect certain people. It affects everyone differently, so we just don't know on that one. Some even say that he was abducted and his organs were sold. I mean, the range of theories is so vast. There have also been these strange things uncovered by the private detective, and some questions that he raised, I must admit, I actually thought myself when researching this case. Firstly, again, I thought this myself, why was he in the doctor's office for 40 minutes? He was having a standard checkup. It would normally be like 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. He was having his eardrum looked. They knew what they were looking for. They would have just looked in his eardrum, maybe done his blood pressure, taken his heart rate, and that would have been it. Unless, because he was so nervous and frightened, the doctor didn't want to let him go. I don't know, but I found it really, really weird that he was in there for so long over a ruptured eardrum, which they were just checking to see whether he could fly over. Not only that, why did a construction worker just walk on in to a doctor's office? That stuff is supposed to be private, that stuff is supposed to be confidential. And this man just walked straight in there. Yeah, okay, he could have opened the door and thought, oops, I shouldn't be in here. But by all accounts, this person didn't leave. This person was still in there for a while. So they didn't walk in and think, oh God, I shouldn't be in here, and left. That wasn't the case. This person was in there a little bit of time. And as soon as this person entered the room, Lars saw them and freaked out and literally ran straight out of there. So I found that very strange too, especially how it's supposed to be confidential. People just don't walk in to doctor's appointments. They just don't. Also, apparently the private investigator did interview the doctor along with the police, and he stated that the two recants of sort of the incident as to what happened in the office were different. So it's just very, very strange. The detective does either believe that it was either homicide or an accident. So what do you guys think happened to him? I have to admit that this case was very, very strange, and is still very strange. Personally, at least, I'd lean more towards the mental health side of it, or maybe sort of effects from drugs being mixed with alcohol. But at the same time, I find it so strange that he was in the doctor's office for so long and that person just strolled in there. It's just really, really weird. Maybe somebody could have been after him. Maybe his beating led to him having some psychological issues because of it. We just don't know. No one truly knows what happened to him. Whether he's still out there somewhere or whether he's no longer living, it's all just speculation. We don't have a clue. His family continues to hold out hope that one day they will find Lars. There hasn't been one confirmed sighting of him since he went missing in 2014. And this case continues to puzzle the world. That footage of his erratic behaviour has gained millions and millions of views around the world, yet the case still remains unsolved. If anyone thinks that they've seen him or knows any information whatsoever on Lars Mittank, please do contact the relevant authorities. Maybe one day we can find him if he's still out there. But yeah, that's the end of the case. Please let me know if you have any more suggestions. I'll look into them for you. Give me a big thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video and subscribe to my channel for similar content. But anyway guys, that's all I have today on the case of Lars Mittank. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye!